friends, I believe that for every one of us, right here on this earth, that there is a promised land for your life. You know, I know we have the promise of the goodness of heaven and the things that we will receive in heaven, but I believe that God has a promised land for your life today, where you will inherit the joy of the Lord and the desires of your heart that the Bible teaches about. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 19, it says this: if you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. I love that, friends. If you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. I believe that good of the land speaks about your promised land, speaks about your inheritance, speaks about that which God has promised for you, that which is the desire of your heart. And you know, the Bible gives, there's two things that we got to do. First, you got to be willing. Well, you know, willing, you know, that the root of that word, it speaks about your desire, and it speaks about your disposition, or your willingness to pay the price. Because, you know, the greatest things in life, you know, they come with a price. You know, a great champion athlete, you know, he's not going to win the title, or he's not going to win the gold medal without paying the price. And the Bible says that we, in our lives, it's like we run in a race. So, you know, we've got to be willing. You know, some people are just content just to sit around and, you know, do basically nothing. And that lazy spirit in their life, they'll never inherit anything. But the first ingredient to inheriting your promised land is you got to be willing. You got to be willing to go, and you've got to be willing to pay the price. But the second ingredient is obedience. There are times, my friends, that we've just got to obey what Jesus says. And sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense. Sometimes we don't understand, but we know in our hearts that the word of the Lord is speaking, and we must be obedient. So, you know, if you want to eat the good of the land, two things: you got to be willing, and you got to be obedient. Now, the opposite of that, continuing in the next verse, it says, but if you refuse, that's the opposite of being willing. And if you rebel, that's the opposite of being obedient. You shall be eaten by the sword. Well, I believe that just speaks to us in a symbolic way of everything that could have been ours, the promises, the inheritance, the promised land that could have been ours was devoured and destroyed by our refusal and our rebellion. So those are the two principles. If you want your promised land, you got to be willing, pay the price, and you got to be obedient to do what Jesus calls you to do. Friends, there's a promised land. There's a promise and inheritance for your life.